So today, I am very, very pleased to introduce our two conversation catalysts, Maggie Caspe, who is a research consultant for NAFSCE, and Ann Henderson, the co-founder and senior consultant for NAFSCE. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because our agenda is really about them being conversation catalysts. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to, I believe, Maggie first. Thank you, Maggie.
I am. I'm going to go first. So thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today. And thank you, everyone, for that warm introduction, Betsy. I am a senior research consultant at NAFSCE, which is the National Association for Family, School, and Community Engagement. And Anne, one of NAFSCE's founders, is here, and she'll tell you a little bit more about NAFSCE in a moment. But as Betsy mentioned, our objectives today are really quite simple. We're going to engage in an interactive conversation around what's inside the family engagement core competencies. And we're also going to reflect together about our roles as family-facing professionals. And I think it's still early enough in the year for me to say Happy New Year to everyone. And you'll see a picture of my daughters and my nieces and nephew who actually live in Connecticut up in on the screen. And I took this picture over the holiday break. So I just wanted to share it because, of course, I'm that aunt who told them I would be speaking to a group of people from Connecticut. And I really asked them, what are you excited about that happened this year in school? And without missing a beat, my nephew said, bringing my baby sister to school with me for sharing day. And besides just being a really kind thing to say, it really struck me that at the end of the day, that's really at the heart of what we do in family and community engagement. It's bringing how we honor, respect, and value families and every piece of children into classrooms and schools, and really creating opportunities for those types of connections to thrive. So thanks, Cameron, for grounding me there. I'm going to hand it over to Anne, who's going to give a little bit of an overview of NAFSCE, and then we'll get started on the family engagement core competency.
Anne is the one that wrote that.
Thank you, Maggie. I go back in Connecticut a long way. Judy and I began working together with Betsy way back in, I think it was around 2007. And we've just been going strong ever since. I so enjoy my connection to Connecticut and the wonderful people who work there and are so committed to this. Connecticut is one of definitely the bright star states in the country in terms of family engagement. And when NAFSCE was founded in 2014, we pulled leaders in the field together to talk about what our mission and vision should be. And we started with our vision, which is, as you can see, a world where family engagement is practiced everywhere as an essential strategy for improving children's learning and advancing equity. Equity was very important to us from the very start. And so from that flowed our mission, which is advancing high impact policies and practices, because a lot of the policies and practices in family engagement are not very high impact. So we need to raise the bar, raise the standard, and improve the practice. And we included community engagement in there, as well as family engagement, to promote children's development and improve achievement. And of course, equity, again, is our key lodestar. And one of the very first things that we brainstormed needed to happen in the field was, first of all, we had to build a field and have, as Judy was saying, we need a strong professional identity for the people who do this work. And one way to do that, of course, is to really improve what teachers to be are learning in their educator preparation programs and what additional support they're getting in professional development opportunities around the the core competencies, as Maggie calls them. We were calling them sort of the knowledge and skills, what do teachers and other educators need to know and be able to do this work well. And then we sat back and looked at each other and said, that's a big job, because before we can start approaching institutions of higher education and professional development providers, we need to know what it is that educators need to know. And that's when we brought Maggie on board to NAFSCE to help us do this. And I am going to turn it back over to her to describe, why we did it and what we did. And go back to the origin story, Maggie.
Thanks, Anne. So just to give a little bit of a broad overview of how we came to these core competencies, and I'll put those in the chat box in a minute so you can access them. But the definition of family and community engagement that we use at NAFSCE and many others in the field use as well is that family and community engagement is a shared responsibility among families, schools, and communities to support student learning. So in this way, family and community engagement is not a one-size-fits-all program or service, but it's really the ways that families guide, support, and advocate for their children's learning. And for schools and communities, it's about reaching out to families and creating the conditions for families to not be subordinate to the school, but to be critical for creators and partners. And as Anne mentioned, research points to a number of benefits of family and community engagement for everyone involved, just like Anne's new book with Karen Mapp and others, Everyone Wins. We know that for students, family and community engagement leads to improved outcomes across the developmental spectrum. For teachers, it leads to things like increased job satisfaction. For families, it leads to increased family well-being and leadership. And we also know that family engagement is a matter of equity. Research shows that family engagement really bears its greatest impact on those families who are most underserved. So family and community engagement is a big part of creating more equitable learning.
And that's why we called the book Everyone Wins.
I know, right? It's really good. So there is a challenge in the field. There are multiple challenges, right, in any field. But the one that we really wanted to hone in on today is that despite all we know about family and community engagement, it's often at the periphery of school reform efforts and practices. And there are a lot of reasons for why that might be. But perhaps one of the biggest reasons is that family-facing professionals, and by that, just like Judy said, we really mean school leaders, educators, family coordinators, after-school providers, librarians, really anyone who works with families. Those family-facing professionals receive very few opportunities early on or throughout their careers to really learn and practice how to partner with families and communities.
And Maggie, back in probably 2010, there was a big survey of teachers to sort of talk with them about why so many leave the field. Like, half of all new teachers leave within 5 years. So we don't have a teacher supply problem, we have a teacher retention problem. And the thing that they said over and over again was the area where they felt least well prepared was family engagement. And not surprisingly, they identified it as their greatest challenge. So I'm just underscoring what you said.
No, and I think that's so important, Anne, right? Because, and Anne, you know this, we sort of wanted to see, this is a survey that we did last year of deans and heads of departments in schools of education. And we asked a similar question of those folks, really just to see, if do those data still hold? And what we found was only 51% of educator preparation programs actually offer a standalone class in family and community engagement. And when we look at how family engagement is integrated into typical coursework, we find that it's mainly in classes on teaching children with special needs or culturally sustaining pedagogy and classroom management, which really leaves a variety of spaces that it could be addressed and it's not. And I think that this ties into some of those findings around educators feeling less prepared in this area and feeling like it's hard to stay in a position when we don't have the skills to necessarily support that work. But it's not just educators, right, Anne?
Right.
You know, it's not just in pre-service. We also know that only 64% of educators actually agree or strongly agree that their schools even provide them with professional learning for family and community engagement.
And I'm actually amazed that it's that high.
Yeah.
That 64% say they're getting something, but I'm glad to see that. A question I had for you, Maggie, and sort of goes back to that last slide, but pertains here as well, is the goal for institutions of higher education to offer a course on family engagement, or is it to embed it across all of the different courses that educators take, or both? What are we aiming for here?
Yeah, and I'll put this link into the chat box in a few minutes as well. But at NAFSCE, we just released a report that's a framework for how we can reimagine how educators are prepared for family and community engagement. And not surprisingly, we would argue that it's both, right? There's real value to having specific courses that call out family and community engagement as a discrete, isolated set of skills. And we'll talk about what those are in a moment when we talk about the core competencies. But it's also important to be able to think about family and community engagement in relation to other domains. So if we are thinking about how children learn to read, it's really important that they also have an opportunity, the educators have an opportunity to think about family and community engagement in that context, in mathematics, in behavioral management, and everything that you could see. So we're definitely arguing for a both and approach. And I also want to share just one more piece of data. We also recently, at the end of last year, did a survey of over 500 family-facing professionals, including a number of family coordinators. And we found that fewer than 40% of family-facing professionals believe that their pre-service or professional training fully covered the core competencies that we're going to talk about in a minute in their preparation. So I present these data to sort of show a little bit across the board that family-facing professionals really are craving more opportunities to learn about family and community engagement in their practice. So with that, what I'm really excited to share with everyone here today are these core competencies that I've been talking about. So NAFSCE, starting about 3 years ago, really wanted to respond to the gap that we've been talking about and drill down on those core competencies that family-facing professionals develop and practice to partner with families and communities. And this is important because we need, as a field, a foundation for our roles and to help set the sequence and scope for building professional capacity. And really what sets our family engagement core competencies apart is really that, while there are a number of standards documents that really exist in the field and stress the importance of family-facing professionals having the knowledge, skills, and dispositions for family engagement, like the newly revised PTA standards, which are terrific, or the Head Start relationship-based competencies. These standards are typically aligned to roles within specific fields or placed at the organizational level or specific to particular points in children's development. So what we were really trying to create are some of those core across the board competencies that family-facing professionals use. So our goal really is not to supplant other standards that have come before us or replace them, but really to enhance, unify, and amplify some of the other reports and work that are out there.
I like that, enhance, unify, and amplify. I think that's really what we need, because there's a lot of work going on out there on this, but it's been disconnected. And so if we can bring it together and sort of infuse it with these insights that we've gained through the work that you've done, and that's what I think everybody wants to hear about, is how in the world did you do this, Maggie? What was the process that you used to pull all of this together and come out with something that so well resonates with the research and with what people say they need?
Yeah, so we developed the family engagement core competencies through a 6-phase process over the course of 3 years. So it took a little bit of time. So in phase 1, as you can see on the screen, we convened something that we called our family engagement core competency committee. And this included a group of family-facing professionals like district and state leaders, faculty, teachers, family liaisons, parent leaders, as well as researchers and community partners. And this group has really been an advisory group in every step of this process.
About how many people are in that group, Maggie?
About 16.
Good.
So in phase 2 and phase 3, what we really did was we synthesized themes and ideas that were really emerging from those early conversations with that committee. And we really grouped them into 8 main competencies, and then conducted a literature review to really ground the emerging competencies in an evidence base to make sure that all of the themes that were sort of starting to emerge were those that research supported in some way. And then in phase 4, we conducted a comprehensive crosswalk of the emerging 8 competencies against the standards of 15 major national organizations, like the National PTA or Head Start, and many others. And we really did that to understand ways that other organizations were talking about and lifting up family and community engagement in their work. And then in phase 5, what we did is we engaged over 60 key partners, including parent leaders, community partners. Judy was there, family coordinators, and more in focus groups and Delphi surveys to really begin to see patterns across what we were learning. And then in our final phase, I mentioned this earlier, we conducted a national validation survey of our competencies with nearly 600 family-facing professionals. If you download the report that I know I'll share in the chat box when I have a minute, but the findings of that survey are at the bottom, or at the end of the core competencies document. So it was a long process. And one that we really wanted to take care to make sure that what we were proposing really reverberated and had evidence both in practice and in research. So without further ado, I would love to share with you what the family engagement core competencies look like. And some of you might have been on earlier webinars from NAFSCE where we presented these. But what you'll see is our organizing framework, which really argues that family-facing professionals who are effective and equitable in their work reflect, connect, collaborate, and lead. So reflection is about looking inward and examining biases and respect for families. Connect is all about building trusting relationships with families and fostering social networks. Collaboration is about linking this work to student learning and social emotional growth. And lead is really about standing alongside families for systems change to champion.
Oh, Maggie, I love the sequence of this and how well it covers all of the different areas that need to be considered when we think about what educators need to know and be able to do. And I wonder if you found that some of these are harder to do than others, and what kind of opportunities do schools offer for teachers to have and other educators to have the time and opportunity to do these things?
And this has actually been the #1 question that we often have been receiving. And this is actually something I want to put to the group when we go into our breakout sessions. This is just a really good conversation for all of us to have, you know, because it's a new idea and we're playing with it. But I think it's important, I think, for us to really think about these competencies as collective. Not so much as separate or modular or discrete, although I've presented them that way so that we can begin to have conversations about each one. But it's really the synergy around reflecting, connecting, and collaborating and leading. When we become more adept, when we're doing this work more and more, I think they become seamless. And I would expect that, you know, a family-facing professional who's, you know, doing this work all the time might not even think about these 4, you know, competency areas separately. But I think as we're starting to think about them and for professional learning purposes, they're really helpful to think about in a separate way. Although when we're doing them in practice, there's going to be a lot of overlap within them. And I think those are the types of examples that I think we're going to pull out in a few minutes. So let's dive into each one, perhaps. And then I want to open it up to lots of conversation with everybody who's here today. But maybe what we could do is we can almost just, you know, start with reflect here. So as I mentioned, each of these 4 competency areas have 2 core competencies within them. So reflect, again, is about looking inward to respect, honor, and value families. And really what we mean by that is family-facing professionals who reflect are really examining, respecting, valuing the cultural and linguistic diversities of families and communities, and exploring with families how children develop, grow, and change from birth through adulthood across settings, and really thinking about how these changes affect families. And the second part of this is really embracing equity throughout family engagement. So family-facing professionals are really constantly looking inward to develop cultural humility, cognitive flexibility, and perspective-taking skills to practice anti-bias and equitable family and community engagement, and are really reflecting on how history and social context influence family engagement systems and practices. So what I'd love to do is I'd love to open it up to everyone here, you know, in the chat box, or even if you're brave enough and want to raise your hand, we welcome that as well. But you know, you're all experts in this work and are doing it each and every day. And I'll go back and share these competencies again, but like, what's a strategy that you have used that's been helpful to you in learning about families, especially because when we think about reflect, it's really at its core understanding families and taking family perspectives. So, you know, just excited to hear in the chat box, and I'll take a look in my chat box as well, what are some ways and what are some strategies that you've been using in your own work that's been helpful in learning about families? You know, and Kimberly, thank you for being the brave one to start us off. I think that's always hard, right? But asking families open-ended questions, right? I think that's just such a great, you know, way to start conversations rather than, you know, closed-ended questions that, you know, really, you know, have preconceived notions of what answers might even be, right? And then Christina, you know, parent-teacher home visits. If somebody would even love to come on, I think home visits are just a really beautiful opportunity and way to learn about families and for I see Betsy has her thumb up. Betsy, do you wanna add to that?
Well, just knowing, and Christina from Windsor has done a wonderful job in implementing the parent-teacher home visiting, as others on this, but it is a wonderful opportunity for school staff to reach out, to leave a building, to leave their, you know, leave their actual building and to meet parents where they are. So it is a great strategy. And it's, you know, again, it's a highly effective strategy for family engagement.
And the dogs program, I don't know what that is.
Does that have something to do with dads?
Yeah, so it does. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we hear
Can
you.
you hear me?
Thanks,
Okay,
Christina.
perfect. Yeah, no problem. So the Watchdogs is a national program model. I think it's based out of like Oklahoma or somewhere out in the Midwest. But it's a super cool program, and it allows dads to come into the school building, volunteer in their child's classroom, a classroom that isn't theirs. They allow dads to, you know, supervise and help out in the lunchroom and go out into recess and hang out with the kids and just be an extra body where education is predominantly women focused. And so to have dads in the building, we have them at our 4 elementary schools, and we have like maybe about 150 dads involved so far. And then we also have them, we just launched our middle school and we're working on our high school program. So it's super cool to have dads in there. You could check us out on Twitter at WPS OFCP, and you'll see tons of pictures of dads helping with math manipulatives and all sorts of really cool things.
That is so cool. Thank you for sharing that. And a great way to understand other, you know, just the whole context of children's lives. That's amazing. I'm even, you know, I'm looking through here, so many really exciting ideas. I was even just looking at this one from Wendy about writing poetry with families, culture, and challenges, and then discussing, you know, all of these are beautiful ideas. Wendy, I don't know if you want to come on and share a little bit of that. Kim has visiting a local mosque with school administrators. You know, I would love, Wendy, if you'd like to come on, if you feel comfortable doing that. Or anyone too.
I can do that when
you
have a minute. It was really interesting. I have a family literacy class, and this year, one of those classes is really higher level students. And they really wanted to focus on writing and speaking. And I wanted to do something that was kind of different. And I have one of the students, we talk about, she loves poetry in her native language. And so I thought it would be really interesting to look at poetry and symbolism and things like that in poetry in English, and kind of compare and contrast with their native language. And then we started writing they started writing their own poetry. And it just seemed like anytime I told them I'd say a prompt, or we'd come up with a prompt. It was something to do with their family or their history. And especially with students who have a history of trauma, it's kind of amazing what comes out when you do even something as simple. I mean, I used to teach middle school English, and we used to do bio poems where they'd put the letters of their names, and then they would put describing words that begin with each letter in their first name. And it's amazing what comes out. It's amazing. And it's a small class. I've only got 5 people in it. And everybody's become so close that they are just so comfortable talking about these things. And everybody, it's unbelievable to me, but I love my students because they're just amazing. And it's come to a point where they talk about it and then support each other. And so it's been something that I kind of thought about would be a quick little unit to do something fun and key into somebody's ability, because she wrote poetry, and of course in her language, and it ended up being just a huge thing. And every couple of weeks we'll go back and write again. We'll do some poetry, and of course other writing too. But
and Wendy, is this shared with families? I'm sorry? Do the children share their poems with their families?
Well, this is actually an adult one. It's a family literacy course.
I see.
So, yeah. So the moms are in my class while the children are in a childcare, a high-level childcare.
That's an amazing way to learn, and respect and honor and value.
Yeah, it's just, and it's all honestly my students, because they just take it and run with it.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you for letting me.
Maybe after this, we can share all of these great ideas that are emerging from the chat box, and just share them all with one another. I'm sure we could spend hours on each of these. And I am very excited about dogs. I'm going to look more into that. So I want to move us forward, just because we have limited time together. But our second competency area is really around connecting. And this area is really about family-facing professionals building trusting, reciprocal relationships with families. Cultivating mutual trust, communicating effectively, creating welcoming environments, and reaching out actively to families, especially those who might be most underserved. And the other component of connection is really around fostering those community partnerships for learning and family well-being. And I saw much of this in the chat box, around the community partners, visiting a local mosque, partnering with the library and after-school program. What we know from the research is that building community partnerships supports children and families. And family-facing professionals do this when they're establishing systems to expand how families link to those community resources, and even cultivate social support networks and connections among families. So we thought maybe we do a little poll here. I think that one of us might actually be opening up a poll for us. But the question that we wanted to ask for all of you is, in your preparation and training, did you learn how to build trusting relationships? We had talked about some of the data that we had collected earlier around family-facing professionals, and educators having limited opportunities to learn these skills. So the question we're going to ask you in our poll is, in your preparation and training, did you learn how to build trusting relationships?
Maggie, do you want me to launch it?
Yeah, do you mind?
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So I don't think that you can all see it, but it's like a horse race over here.
Yeah.
The yeses, the sort ofs, the not of all. Let's see. Mary Lou, I'm going to say maybe close it in about, looks like we've slowed down a little bit. Mary Lou, can you share out for everybody to see where the responses are?
Yes, 34% of you said yes, that you did learn how to build trusting relationships. 43% said sort of, and 24% said not at all.
Okay, and that actually mirrors some of the national data that we had collected that you'll see in the core competencies. Actually building trusting relationships is actually the competency area that people felt most prepared for. It was also the area that people thought was most important. And that's not surprising. I think, Anne, that you've done so much of this research. I think we know that you know, these mutual, respectful relationships are sort of the cornerstone of this work. So it's encouraging to see that, you know,
This is very
stuff stopped working.
Yeah, so
very encouraging because it really is the bedrock. It's the soil on which everything else takes root. If you don't have healthy, trusting relationships in a school community, nothing else works. You got to have it. It's foundational. And it runs across all the research, early childhood through high school, and, you know, literacy, everything.
Yeah. You know, but the gap still remains. You know, I'm seeing here, you know, that 24% of us on the line, you know, really didn't have any to learn and practice these skills. So it's still a gap and something for us to aspire to in our work. Thank you very much for sharing that that poll. So I want to jump into our third competency area, which is collaborate. And what we know is that family-facing professionals collaborate. And, you know, whereas connection is about reaching out to families and building those relationships, collaboration is about harnessing those relationships towards intentional goals around student learning and programming and all of the other types of work that you do. So when we think about collaboration, family-facing professionals who do this work well are really co-constructing learning opportunities with families. They're building on family knowledge as resources for learning. And they join with families for planning, implementing, and evaluating learning opportunities and services. And I know that there's been a lot in the literature around, we're not doing to and for families, but we're doing with families. And I think that's the real spirit of collaboration and co-construction. And the other area of collaboration that really emerged as important in the work that we did was around the importance of linking family and community engagement to learning and development. And we know from the dual capacity framework and so many other resources and reports and research that we have on family and community engagement that it's critical. And what we know is that family-facing professionals are constantly developing data systems that are accessible to each and every family. They're creating conversations around developmental and academic progress, and expanding on family learning in the home and the community to reinforce what children learn and know. So I thought maybe what we could do is have another chat box conversation, and if folks would like to come on as they feel comfortable. You know, what's a strategy you use to link families to literacy, reading, math, and social emotional learning? And doing this based on co-construction and collaboration with families. I actually think, Wendy, your example of your poetry is a great example of this. It gives an opportunity to understand and respect and learn and value families. And it links to your family literacy work through the poetry. So I'm gonna give a few minutes for folks to think about strategies that you use to link families to literacy, and reading, math, and social emotional learning in your work. And anyone who would like to come on and share can also do that as well. You know, one of the things that we've been doing at NAFSCE is really focusing on family math. And thinking about all the ways that math exists in communities and how we can draw up those mathematical funds of knowledge to mathematics. So that's another way that we've seen. So
maybe Grace would like to talk about the New Promise program. What is that?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. I'm joined by my amazing director, Ann Mead, next to me. She doesn't like the camera, so I have the camera off this morning. But the New Promise program is a program we developed for families new to Danbury, and they are enrolled right after they finish their registration with their students. So right here at the registration office, our Face Center, we grab them right when they're done with their paperwork, and they are enrolled in a 2-day program or a 2-hour program on Zoom, depending on whether they'd like it in person or on Zoom. And it's a crash course in everything Danbury schools related. So everything from who their principal is, to their family liaison and their role, attendance and health policies, social emotional learning and defining that and showing how they'll see that in their school. Supporting their learner at home is the second module of that program. And that's where you'll see the link to literacy, reading, and math. And that's where we include step-by-step curriculum guides for families so they can support that learning at home. And that includes videos, live modules for them to watch, as well as links and contact information for the key people in their classroom, in their school, in their district that can help them through some of these pieces.
Grace, are those available in different languages?
They're available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, which is really the key to this program. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because we are such a diverse community here, and a large portion of our families do not speak English as a first language. And so it's really important that not only all of our communications are available in multiple languages, but our programs, this program itself is presented in their language and throughout the entirety of the program. So it's not translated as we go. They are speaking with someone who's fluent in their language and connected with that person throughout the program.
Okay. Wow, that's really powerful. I love the way Danbury has embraced its new families and its diversity rather than complaining about it. Not at all. They see it as an asset. And that's so important.
And I don't know if you can see, but Kyrinda, I hope I said your name correctly, Richardson has her hand raised.
It's Kyrinda, yes.
All right.
So some of the things that we've been able to do with our numeracy nights and our literacy nights is taking the focus away from the numbers and the reading per se and basing it more on concepts and using games and activities to neutralize the space. So some of those games, like for numeracy night, we will add different types of Sudokus. A lot of people are used to doing them with numbers, but there's ways to do Sudokus with shapes, with colors, and different things to still get your mind thinking analytically, instead of just purely with numbers and helping your brain get used to seeing math in different areas outside of tasks and assignments. The other thing we'll do is invite different community partners, or parents may drive by, but won't go inside to see what access and resources they may have, like Mathnasium, like Kuman, and those places are eager sometimes to get into the schools or eager to get into in front of parents and maybe offer scholarships that they may have for parents to seize and to take specialized or customized resources. for their children as well, and just a way to try to make these things fun. So instead of getting them to read books and assignments, what are things that you like to talk about in the car? What are things that you like to talk about at the dinner table? And have you read a comic book with your kid, or a billboard, or different things that you're doing along your daily activities that can still promote these concepts outside of their homework, that the family can learn and strengthen themselves together?
Wow, that's terrific.
That's awesome.
Such good examples of linking to learning. And
Really
in ways that build parents' confidence that they can help their kids and that they are their children's first teachers, and they may be learning important literacy and numeracy skills themselves as they do this, especially if their first language is not English.
Oh, that's so cool. And there's so many real, I wish we could spend the entire.
We have to save everything in these chat boxes.
I know there were like, I see Power My Learning, more on game nights.
Fantastic.
Lots to dig into there. Just to be mindful of time, I would like to make sure that we get to our final competency area, which is about leading alongside families. And in this competency area, what we see is that family-facing professionals take part in lifelong learning, just like you're doing here today through Family Cafe, right? Through Friday Cafe. But, you know, this is about family-facing professionals identifying and participating as a member of the family engagement profession, engaging in professional learning to grow family engagement knowledge and skills, and really using data to assess, evaluate, and improve family and community engagement. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, advocating for systems change. Family-facing professionals identify and examine new and existing policies and practices to further family and community engagement. They champion equity as an essential element of family and community engagement, and stand with families for equitable educational systems and outcomes. And I know that, you know, this is a particularly on-point topic given the environment we live in today. And also, family-facing professionals reframe the conversation around family and community engagement to expand public understanding of what we do and how we do.
So important, Maggie. And generally, if you ask people what are the different components of family engagement, leadership doesn't come up. People think of, you know, families helping their kids at home and that sort of thing, or coming to meetings that the school calls. But I'm sure that there's an element in here of teachers and other educators supporting families to become co-leaders with them.
Yes.
On championing equity and looking at existing policies and how they can be improved and all of that.
Thanks. No, you're right, Anne. And I should say, and if you have an opportunity to download the core competencies, you'll see that each of these 7A, 7B have little sub items and more to them. So I think that that's a good point. So in a moment, we are going to hop into some breakout rooms to do a little bit of reflecting together. But before we do that, we thought we'd open up one final poll around lead. Let's see. So Mary Lou, if you'd like to open up the poll for us, the question that we're going to ask everyone is, have you advocated for change to support family and community engagement in your setting? And is this something you've done in the past, maybe something that you are actively doing, something you'd like to do, or maybe it's something you're interested in learning more about? A good topic for another Friday Cafe. So let's take a few seconds for everyone to vote. See, we have answers coming in again. It's like a little bit of a race car race. Mary Lou, do you want to share where it looks like we're landing?
It's not giving me a share. It's only giving me an end poll. Huh. Why don't you wait till you want to end it, and then I'll see if it gives me an option to share.
It looks like the ticker's slowed down, so why don't we end it?
Okay, all right. There you go.
Ah, there we go. So this is definitely a group that is leading alongside families, something that people are actively doing. I know that that's something that we don't have a ton of time for, but would be curious to hear all about that work. For some of us, it's something we've done in the past. For some of us, it's something we'd like to do, and for some of us, it's something we need to learn a little bit more about. So really exciting work. So as I alluded to, what we're going to do now is we're going to have a little bit of time for breakout rooms. And what we thought we would do in our breakout rooms is really focus on reflect. And Judy and Betsy, I don't know if you'd like to talk a little bit about, your hopes for this breakout session. But we really wanted to talk about and think about reflection, not just because it's the first competency area, but we think that, in some ways it's the cornerstone of a lot of the work that we do and the ways that Friday Cafe is supporting our work. So the questions we're going to have as our conversation starters in these breakout rooms are: how do you self-reflect in your practice and question your assumptions? And then thinking a level above yourself, how do you let parents know you care about their child? And then even, beyond just your own self and your relationships with parents, how do you share ideas with colleagues at your school? Friday Cafe is a really exciting way to share information among like-minded colleagues here in this space, but how do you do that at your school, perhaps in your everyday routine? So Betsy and Judy, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I'll just say thank you, Maggie, that as we were thinking about the questions and about the self-reflection piece, that we all really need a bit more time for. One of the best learnings we have in family engagement is sometimes when we share something that we did, and then we thought about it, and then we did things differently. And family engagement is always a growth area for professionals. And a lot of times we can learn from what other people did that they now think, ooh, I would have done that differently if I had a little bit more experience. So we always learn by sharing, not, as we say, Friday Cafe is a safe laboratory. We can talk about perhaps bumps in the road. Those are always learning experiences. And then caring about families, children's, as Anne said, foundational to everything else we do. And the third question we thought about, one of the things family engagement professionals really talk about is, I wish I could share this with my principal, or I wish I could share this with other people in my school. And so we thought about what are some good strategies for us to do that? So that's where our questions came from.
Hey, Betsy, we had some wonderful conversations in my group.
Does anyone want to raise their hand and kind of be a brave person and say, wow, what I learned? Or what about this whole self-reflection piece?
I'll do it. I shared with the group, just making sure that it was very important for all of us to self-reflect. With dealing day to day, sometimes we get caught in the same pattern and routine. And sometimes our energy is met with where their students or their parents. So self-reflection always works to benefit that you're at your best to provide the best care and support for the families.
So we had some really great conversation, a lot of sharing. The first question asked a little bit about what do you do for self-reflection? Some folks were like, I look at what I did yesterday. And so then I try to prioritize for the next day. Where do I need to improve? The last question was a great question around how do you share information with your colleagues about, in the schools and stuff. And so there are two folks in our group who shared two platforms that I don't think, I even thought about. even though we do them on different levels, but it just, I don't know, it just never made sense until this point. And so I believe his name was Edwin, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was Lewis, maybe I'm getting everybody confused, doesn't matter. The point is that they had mentioned that Parent Square has a staff component in which you can communicate to your colleagues. And I totally forget about that feature because we're so focused on using it for families that we don't think to use it for our colleagues. And so that's a super great feature. And then Letty, and I'm so thankful for her for sharing. She talked about how they have a parent cafe monthly, and then she has different topics every month. So like, you know, she'll get feedback from the families, and then she'll do these different topics, have families come together and prepare materials on those different topics. So one of them was like, you know, anxiety, and, you know, just trying to get, you know, families to talk about anxiety and where those resources can come from, and how to go about resources. And so I thought that was really cool. And so I have a bunch of my family resource center coordinators here, so we'll be talking a little more about that.
I think, so we did get through all three questions, but the first question was, how do we self-reflect? And I did share that prior to this particular role that I'm in, I was within a school. And one of the things that I began to do was self-reflect, honestly, even in the moment of when I was engaging with parents. And I realized that although, and this may sound silly, although I love to wear shoes and I love to wear blazers, sometimes it wasn't really productive in allowing families to feel comfortable in sharing their needs with me. And so I didn't necessarily dress down, but it was either, sometimes it was in my conversation. I was able to share how, you know, I'm originally from New York City. I'm originally from an inner city. I'm originally from a single parent home. And sometimes it wasn't like, it wasn't directly sharing those, but it was kind of like in the conversation, and it allowed them to feel, you know, I'm a mother of three that are, you know, I have children at 3 different schools. And so this resource really helps me. And so in sharing those things, they were able to honestly let their guard down and feel more comfortable in coming to me and, you know, yes, as a professional in the building, but also as a parent, as a real person. So that was something that I was able to kind of reflect and just be able to adjust maybe in my conversation with them. Yeah.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And I like your shirt.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I got this somewhere. Thank you. I needed encouragement this morning.
Lydia
I need that shirt.
Talked about how all the different things she does to let families and children know that she cares and is there for them and is in constant touch with them. I was so touched by that, Lydia. It was just a beautiful example of somebody who's totally committed to their job and their families, and what that must mean to the families. And, you know.
So Judy, we're at our time now. So do you want to just do some final comments for us? And do you have any stellar words of wisdom for us?
My word is awe. I'm in awe of the incredible work that's being done and the collective we have here. So thank you all so much. Thank you for sharing. We will capture this chat that I think is a treasure trove of ideas and resources, and we'll send it back out to you. Several of you asked about, are we recording? Yes. And it'll be on our Friday Cafe YouTube channel. And I'll send out a link to everybody. I have one arm, so I'm not typing and putting things in the chat so well these days. I just want to appreciate you and say thank you for joining us.
And thank you, Maggie, and thank you, Anne, for your expertise and bringing us just some wonderful, wonderful information. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. V, for being brave.
With that, we are adjourned.